So in today's video, I'm going to talk a little bit about swamps and how you can find them in the first place, how you can explore them, what to expect when you're there, what to take with you, and how to get a base set up there. Now, there will be chapters to this video, so if any of the stuff that we start with here is a bit too basic and you already know it, then do skip along to the bit that is relevant to you. But I just tried to make this like a full guide from the very basics of what you need to know. Now, on that end as well, if there's anything you're a bit confused about, check out the pinned comment in this video, because I'm going to put there links to a load of helpful videos that will show you things along the way. So if there's anything you're not sure on, do check that out. But for now, let's jump into the swamp guide. Okay, so first up, we want to talk about how we're going to find a swamp and also what to take with us before we go adventuring out for a swamp. So if I press M, open up my map here, basically the islands kind of spawn in rings. You can see we've got this big ring-shaped map, and that's how the islands are going to spawn, right? So you've got like your inner ring, which is where you spawn, and that's like mostly meadows with a few black forests and stuff. To find swamps and things, you'll have to venture further afield. You have to sail out. Now, as I said, there are pinned videos, and 2 of them will show you how to sail and also how to deal with sea serpents along the way if you are worried about that. But what you'll do then is you'll find these swamps in these rings sort of around here. They'll be reasonably close, as you can see. Like, for example, here's our main island. We've got one just over here. We've got like a couple just over here. So they're not going to be too far, but you will need to venture out into the sea. And to that end, I highly recommend you make the carve. Doing this in a raft, guys, not only will it take ages, but you're probably going to die. Now, in terms of what you want to take with you, it kind of depends. There's 2 ways you can do this. One is to fully gear up and just go for everything, take all your best stuff, and try to make it, right, and hope that you don't die along the way. However, I have like done this in the past and died and kept losing loads of good stuff, and it was very frustrating. So another way you may want to go is to just take the basic resources with you, get yourself set up, and then you can return using portals. So that brings me on to my next point, which is portals. Again, there's a video in the description linked in the pinned comments, I should say, if you want like a guide on how to use portals. But basically what you can do is, I've got here SW. Now, that obviously stands for swamp. The reason I made it SW is in case I needed to set up very quickly when I get there. SW right next to each other, I can quickly enter that tag and teleport home if I'm in trouble. But what you want to do is set this portal up before you go, and at that point it will of course be unconnected. Then when you get to your swamp, you can make a portal and teleport back to your base to gear up and all that sort of stuff, and keep getting back to the swamp. Now, that being said, of course the portal does require some materials like fine wood and Surtling core, which early game can be a little bit difficult to get. So you want to like factor this in. How much of this stuff do you have? And if you don't want to risk losing that stuff, then another way you can go is to simply go onto your map, and when you find your swamp, put a bit of a left click in there, mark it out on the location, and then you can return later once you know the passage a little bit better. You might have noticed some safety points, like for example, there's an island here. If a sea serpent comes, I can get into. There's lots of shallow water here I can travel through. Again, that'll help me with sea serpent and that type of thing. So it really just depends on your comfortability with the game and how many resources and things you have. So you can make a decision on that, but I just wanted to sort of flag this up for you. So if you are just taking basic things, what I recommend is take some basic food, take your materials to obviously make the boat, because what you're going to do, of course, is like from your base wherever you're at, run to some water, make your workbench, make your boat, and then travel off. So make sure you have obviously all the materials that you need to do that, and take some basic weapons and armor as well, just to help you out if you get into a little bit of tricky situations. So you're not going to like die instantly. It might just be enough for you to escape whatever's problems you encounter and hopefully save your life. Now, if you are going to go down the route of taking a portal, do make sure to take with you some wood and a hammer, and you're going to need to, when you get to the area, and I'll show you this later on, make some of these fences that you see here around your portal, just to keep it safe from anything attacking it and destroying the portal. Otherwise, it's all sort of a waste of time. So again, I'm going to show you that later. Just make sure you have a lot of wood on you in order to be able to do that. Also, I didn't say it here, but do of course make sure you take the materials with you to actually make the portal once you get there as well. So if you are going down this route of taking portals and gearing up, then of course you want to take the best food you can get, the best weapons, the best armor, all of that stuff with you. It's also, you might want to think about taking some basic tools with you, things like an axe and a hoe and that sort of thing. This is just to get your base set up, but you might need to just clear an area, level some land to get some things placed down, to then be able to go and basically protect your portal and build that area around it. Another thing to consider taking with you is a good bow with lots of arrows. This is going to be one of the best ways to fight the sea serpent, and also if there are any mobs on the shore of the swamp that start sort of attacking you as you get closer, it might just give you the ability there to stay in your boat and take a few of those down before you land safely. Now, in terms of like armor and weapons and stuff, a couple of things to say. First of all, I recommend that you prioritize your shield. Get the best shield that you can make. If you're going to use materials on something, this is the thing to do. The reason being that by parrying enemies, by blocking with your shield, not only can you save yourself from taking a lot of damage, but you can basically stun them and then attack them, and at this point even a weaker weapon is still going to be a lot more useful to you than if you don't have a good shield and you're taking a lot of damage. Really the priority when you're doing this swamp thing is to just like limit the damage you're going to take as much as you possibly can. Now, at the moment, our goal here is basically we're going to find the swamp and we're going to get ourselves set up in a swamp. But for that, you still do want to take the arrows and the good bow and stuff like that, and the good shield for when you land. Also, obviously, make sure you do have some sort of melee weapon on you. And the final thing that you want to take with you as well in that regard is a harpoon. Again, video in description to show you how to get this, but the harpoon is going to be a good defense against the sea serpent if you do run into one. Final thing I highly recommend before you go, guys, is to sleep like just before you go. So wait until it's nighttime, sleep, and then go first thing in the morning. The reason for that is everywhere in Valheim is more difficult at night, but the swamp in particular is much more treacherous of an evening. It's harder to see the mobs, they sort of blend in more because they're darker colored mobs. You've also got things like the water that you might end up getting stuck in, you know, it's just a bit more difficult to see, and you can get wraiths and just some nasty mobs and things spawning at nighttime. So I highly recommend you want to sleep before you go. It'll also give you the visibility when you're on the ocean to see a bit further and spot the swamp from further away, which is just going to be useful all round. Okay, so you've headed out on your boat to the ocean and found yourself a swamp biome, which can be seen with these spiky trees. Now, right now, I am actually pretty close to this, and I recommend you don't get this close when you're first looking for the swamp biome. I would say keep a very good distance from the swamp biome and just make a note of where exactly it is, and then start to just sail around a bit and see what else you can find. Now, ideally, what you're looking for is what you see just in front of us right now, which is a biome next to the swamp that is not a swamp, right? So this case is, of course, a black forest. Now, if it's a plains, that's not good at all. Do not try to set up your base in a plains. But if you can find a black forest or meadows or something like that next to the swamp, then setting up your base there is a very good idea, as it will just be a lot safer for you. So the other thing to say on that is if you don't find a good swamp location, like I found one over here to the right of the map and I kept dying and stuff, it just wasn't happening, so I abandoned it and I started searching again. I then found one up here and then I found one down here before finally settling on this swamp location that we're actually looking at right now. Don't be afraid, guys, to go out there and find multiple swamps. If the first one you get to, for whatever reason, you know, maybe it's too small, maybe there's just an abundance of mobs there and you keep dying and losing your stuff, it can be very frustrating, okay? I've lived through this myself. Don't be afraid to find multiple locations. You need to explore in this game anyway, so it's not a bad thing to do. But if you get lucky like this, then this is kind of the perfect situation, because you can then set up your base here in a much safer biome. So to that end, once you get onto the shore, you want to make a bit of an area just like you see here. These wooden spikes around your portal, you will of course need a workbench put down as well in order to build all this stuff in the first place and repair your boat and that sort of thing. Now this is like in place because we need to protect ourselves from any mobs in the area. So obviously we don't want them destroying our portal. But at that point, your goal really is to get that portal down and named as quickly as possible, and then you can, of course, go through it to go back to your base and come back anytime you need. So you can now come back to your base, take a bit of a breather, re-gear, and go again. Okay, so you've returned home. Now, the first thing to do is go ahead and just repair anything that's got broken along the way using your workbench and forge if necessary. Of course, this is just like good, obvious practice, but something you don't want to forget, and you may once you're in the moment of exploring the swamp. So once all that is done, what you want to do now is we're going to go and explore the swamp, right? We've got our portals set up there, so if we do die, we can get back very quickly. What you may want to do is, this is my portal to the swamp, so you may want to consider putting like a bit of a chest down here with some like basic gear and stuff, like secondary gear like food and secondary armor and that sort of thing, so if you die you can quickly just gear back up and go again, so that you can do it while it's still daytime. Otherwise you might need to like wait and it just might take a bit more time, because we are going to sleep again as soon as we can, and then when we go to the swamp it'll be as much daytime as possible, again just to protect ourselves. So most of the obvious stuff here is, again, you know, just making sure you got your best armor and weapons and tools and that sort of thing, right, to go and explore the swamp with. Now, if you're looking to get the iron, you will want to take with you a bronze pickaxe and a swamp key. If you're looking to cut down the ancient trees, you'll need a flint axe or better. And so it's just about what your specific goals are. So consider those, make sure you've got all the gear you need for that sort of thing. When it comes to armor, I've seen a good argument made for why troll armor is really useful. Now, the reason for this is basically it's pretty simple to get. Again, there's a video pinned in comments to show you how to do this easily. It'll give you a reasonable amount of armor, particularly at this particular stage of the game. So that's useful in and of itself. But also, it's actually quite lightweight. Now, what that means is you won't be dragged down as much as if you're wearing, say, bronze armor, which you could also get at this stage. And what you'll be able to do then is have more stamina and be able to run away a bit better and that sort of thing, because you're going to need to flee a lot. Stamina is going to be really important in the exploration of the swamp. So troll armor is potentially a way to go. Now, do ensure you definitely want a ranged weapon and a lot of arrows. Take the best arrows you can. Fire arrows are negated in the swamp because it's always wet, but just take a lot of good arrows with you. The main thing is the quantity of arrows more than anything. The other thing that you're going to want to do is, of course, have some sort of melee weapon. I particularly like the bronze mace, and you're going to see that in action later on in this video. And also, again, make sure you've got the best shield you can take with you. Now, that being said, there is some stuff you can also put back. For example, we don't need our harpoon anymore. We don't need our hoe anymore. If there's anything that you've picked up along the way, you might have picked up, you know, some resin or bones or something like that, go ahead and keep them back at your base. There's just no point risking losing that sort of stuff. Now, there are a couple other things you can take if you want. The poisonous resistance mead is pretty good. You're going to get poisoned in the swamp quite potentially, particularly when you're not used to it, and this will obviously help with that and negate that. So we've got the mead here. You can see there, this needs to be fermented. If you need to make up a fermenter and that sort of thing, there'll be a video coming to my channel soon, but I'm sure you'll be able to find that information. But essentially, you make all this stuff up in the cauldron. Another thing you can make in the cauldron are stamina meads, and you can see here there are the recipe for this particular stamina mead right here. You can also make some healing mead as well. Now, it's up to you whether or not you take these. Obviously, it probably is preferable. You've got the extra things that you can take with you, but the main one I would say really is the poisonous one. One final thing to say, if you are going to make up some of these meads for poison resistance or anything else, is that the mead will take a couple of in-game days to ferment. So you may want to make like a few fermenters up and also get that process started first, and then while you're doing everything else, obviously the time is passing for that to be done. So I just thought I'd mention that in case you were unaware. In terms of food, that's when you know, we really want to focus on taking the best possible food we can take to give ourselves as much stamina and as much HP as possible. It is going to be very useful to us. Okay, so some other things to think about as well before going to the swamp. If you do plan on exploring the crypts, of course you will need to take with you a swamp key to get into those crypts, so do obviously bear that in mind. If you're not obviously looking to do that at first, you can leave it at home. Again, to get the swamp key, you need to beat the Elder Boss. There'll be a video pinned in the description on how to do that. So I think most of the stuff now we've actually talked about. The only other thing would be to sleep before we go and make sure we've got those meads and all those foods eaten up before we go to give ourselves the hit points. One final thing though is to make sure you've got your Eikthyr ability able to be activated before you go. If you've already defeated the Elder Boss and switched to this, you can go back to your spawn point and activate Eikthyr and have it ready there to press F. Again, like every little helps. It's just going to give you a little bit of a boost before you go through the swamp. I accidentally just pushed mine a second ago, but yeah, you guys know the deal. And then of course sleep before you go, and then we'll head through the portal and start exploring the swamp. Okay, so as we near our swamp, of course approaching from the Black Forest where we set up our base earlier, what you want to do is make sure you've got your shield and your mace or whatever you're using selected, but then press R so that it is on your back and you're able to run a little bit faster in case you need to, but it's there for quick access. Also, you'll see here I've eaten my food, so I went for necktails and the cooked meat as well as some Queen's jam. This is all stuff you should easily be able to make before coming to the swamp. This is not like any sort of late game stuff that you're going to find difficult to make. I did it that way on purpose. Now, what you want to do as well, I highly recommend you just activate your Eikthyr ability. Again, it's just going to help with that stamina when you're running away and stuff like that, so you just as well use it. And also, I would say to yourself, just take things careful when you're first going to the swamp, particularly if you're new to the area. Just look ahead, have a little scout around, make sure everything's looking good before you just go running on in there, because it's much easier to escape when you're on the edge like this if there is an issue. Okay, so here we are in the swamp, and we've encountered one of the first monsters you'll like to see here, which is a skeleton. Now, skeletons are not too bad. You can see here 2 hits of the bronze mace, and they're dead. So they're not too difficult. The only ones that sometimes will cause you problems maybe are the ones that have bows, because they can fight you from a bit further afield. Now, you can see the Dragur over there. Again, just being aware of my surroundings here and planning how I want to get through this. Now, as I said before, one of the things you will encounter are these ancient trees right here. So we're going to chop one of these down, and I'll show you the drops that you'll get from an ancient tree. Okay, so the drop for the ancient tree right here is ancient bark. This will unlock some new things that you can build, things like a bonfire, for example, which is a useful fire that won't go out in the rain, and other things like that. So that's why you're going to want to get the ancient tree stuff cut down, potentially. Obviously, it depends, you know, on what you're here for. Now, obviously, what we're going to do now, I'm just going to keep exploring, and as I come across different mobs and things like that, I'm just going to talk through the best ways of dealing with them. Okay, so this here behind me is a crypt, and this is where you're going to come to, of course, get your iron. Now, you can use E to open the crypt up and go in like this, and it will take you through to a new section just here. Now, I'm going to do an in-depth tutorial on how to explore the crypts and how to get iron efficiently, as it does warrant its own type of video. But just to say, basically, you see these muddy scrap piles here. If you mine those, that is going to be a way for you to get iron scraps. You see there's a couple of them them here, and it will open up chambers for you to explore. Again, a video coming on my channel soon for this, as this is not like a full guide about iron, just about the swamp in general, but this is what a crypt will look like. Whilst at the crypt, another thing you might want to consider is just marking the location of it on a map so that you can come back later on if you're not going to be exploring it right now. It could just be handy to get there very quickly, of course. Okay, so just in the water here you can see we've got some blobs, and they can be a little bit tricky to deal with. Essentially what you want is just to not let them get too close to you, because if they do, they can and will poison you. So the best thing to do is to fight them ranged like this. If they get close, make sure you run away. Again, we're going to keep a little bit of stamina at all times so we can flee. That is an important thing about exploring the swamp, and just shoot them from the range like I'm doing right here. In terms of things the blobs will drop, you can see here you get ooze from them, and also you can get blob trophies from them as well. As soon as your food starts to flash, which mine is doing right now, make sure you eat. Again, it is good to just make sure you're eating at all times. I know this one sounds a little bit obvious, but you just want to make sure you're keeping one eye on your food whilst exploring through the swamp to make sure that as soon as you're able to get those extra hit points and extra stamina buffs, you get them. Okay, so right here guys in the water you can see there we've got a leech. Leeches will try to attack you and they will poison you, so you definitely don't want to get in the water with them. The best way to fight these guys really is to just range them. Once you're up here and you're out of their way up on land, there's not much they can do. They're only really going to get you if you're in the water with them. You can see they'll even swim away there once you start to attack them. Leeches though, they do drop some useful things. The things that they drop, their little blood bags and things like that, they can be used in healing potions and things like that. So some of their drops can be quite useful, particularly like you might even want to get some of their drops for those healing potions and then go off and you know, make them up and come back again, because obviously, you know, those healing potions are useful. Now this is a good time actually. Over here we've got a Dragur. Now these come in different forms. This one here, as you see, is a melee Dragur. He's got a shield and like an axe on him. I'm just gonna check there's nothing else around here while I'm just chatting to you guys. Sometimes they'll have a bow on them. These guys can hit quite hard, so the best thing is to try to do this, parry them, so that is blocking them just before they hit you. And you see that I managed to get 3 solid hits on him with my my mace and killed him. So they're not too difficult if you can do that. When they become difficult is when they're in packs, and particularly the ones with bows, they can really pack a punch and from a distance, so you do need to be careful of those. Now what the Dragurs will drop are these things. These are entrails. These are very useful. They can be used to make up sausages, which are a fantastic food source at this stage of the game. And if I weren't doing a tutorial, I would have been using sausages myself, as I have already killed several Dragurs, and when I come back to the swamp, that is what I intend to use. So definitely a useful food resource, guys, and again, something that you might want to get a few of those and go make your sausages before you come back. To make the sausages, you will also need 1 raw meat, and I believe it's 8 thistle, but a lot of thistles, basically. There are 2 other creatures in the swamp that you might see that can attack you. The first is this guy. This is a Wraith, and you got like information down here on the wiki about it. Basically, it will spawn either at nighttime or in abandoned houses. One of the items that they drop are chains, and I think that right now is probably the best way of getting chains in the game, potentially the only way of getting chains in the game. These guys, they'll fly around. They cannot do any ranged attacks, but they can hurt you when they get up close. The best way to fight these is to basically shoot your bow and arrow at them. That's going to be the best way to fight them, rather than letting them get up close where they can do any sort of damage to you. The other are these guys, little Surtlings, and as you can see here, it says they will spawn around fire geysers and next to runestones. So this here is what a fire geyser looks like. Again, I wasn't able to find any of these. I don't actually have any fire geysers in my swamp area. I do have a runestone, but none were spawning. I spent about 2 hours all up looking for Wraiths and these Surtlings, and none of them spawn. Yet when I was trying to get to the swamp to set this video up, I had about 3 Wraiths attack me. So just the cursor recording, but I just want you guys to be aware of these. So the Surtlings here, they can drop Surtling core, they can also drop coal. If they attack you, they can do fire damage, but you're always wet in the swamp and there's always water nearby that you can run into. So generally, it's not going to be too difficult, but you know, they can still hurt you with the fireballs that they shoot at you. You know, will damage you and will hurt you. So you've got to be careful, but they are pretty weak to fight. You can just go up and club them is probably the best way to kill those. So guys, I really hope today's video helped you out in at least some way, and if it did and you want to see more Valheim content, please do consider liking and subscribing for more. As you may have noticed, if you're not new here, I am making a lot of Valheim content at the moment. If there's unanswered questions about the swamp or anything you feel like could be added to help people out, please do let me know down in the comments and I'll try and get back to you, or potentially even pin the comment if there's a lot of good, useful tips in there that I may have missed today. But as I say, I hope this video helped at least somewhat, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. So today's video was a bit longer, and the idea of it was to go into a bit more detail on how to get started going into swamps and that type of thing. But let me know down in the comments whether this was too basic, or you prefer shorter videos, or if you actually prefer this new format.